HBO's The Last of Us TV show will be released in early 2023, and its trailers have already caused quite a stir, both among fans of the game and those who are simply excited about a Pedro Pascal zombie show with Bella Ramsey aka Game of Thrones' Lyanna Mormont together for the ride. The Last of Us on HBO is an adaptation of the popular post-apocalyptic video game series from Naughty Dog and Sony. The production of the HBO show Last of Us is led by Craig Mazin, creator of the acclaimed miniseries Chernobyl, and Neil Druckmann, writer and director of the games of The Last of Us. That's why Pedro Pascal's next series is already creating conversations. HBO brings to life the critically acclaimed video game The Last of Us. On the surface, The Last of Us is a typical zombie apocalypse spectacle, but just like the games, there's so much more to the narrative and setting. While the iconic clickers are guaranteed to scare audiences, The Last of Us HBO trailers are already showing that they're not the main attraction. It's the characters, Pedro Pascal's Joel and Bella Ramsey's Ellie, who are at the heart of the cordyceps brain infection that turned most of humanity into violent, mindless creatures. Here's everything you need to know about HBO's The Last of Us TV series, including the release date, story details, and cast. HBO's The Last of Us release date. The Last of Us will be released on HBO and HBO Max on January 15, 2023. It's been a long wait for fans of The Last of Us games, the first of which was released in 2013, almost exactly a decade before The Last of Us TV series was released on HBO. Demand for a live-action Last of Us adaptation surfaced almost immediately after the first game's release on PS3. Now, nearly 10 years later, The Last of Us is making its HBO debut. Joel and Ellie's story, winner of the Writers Guild of America's 2014 Outstanding Achievement in Video Game Writing, can finally reach the wider audience it deserves in January 2023. The Last of Us TV series cast. The cast of HBO's show The Last of Us has been slowly announced over the years since the show was first announced in March 2020. While both the show and the games are filled with tense moments featuring cordyceps-infected clickers and post-apocalyptic spectacle, it's the characters and cast of The Last of Us that will captivate viewers. The original video game The Last of Us follows two survivors, Joel and Ellie, as they struggled across the United States in search of a cure for cordyceps infection. Seeing their dynamics in action live is what has made fans of the game so interested in who HBO has cast for The Last of Us. HBO clearly understood the importance of casting Joel and Ellie in The Last of Us. As revealed early on in The Last of Us promo, teasers, and trailers, Joel Miller is played by the Mandalorian himself, Pedro Pascal. As in the games, Pascal's Joel in The Last of Us TV show is a troubled smuggler who is unwittingly dragged into an attempt to save the world. His companion, Cargo, Ellie, 14, immune to cordyceps, is played by Bella Ramsey. Just like Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey also appeared in HBO's Game of Thrones, where Pascal played Oberyn Martell and Ramsey played Lyanna Mormont. In addition to Pedro Pascal as Joel and Bella Ramsey as Ellie, HBO has announced a full cast for The Last of Us. The HBO adaptation features characters from the games as well as new ones created for the series. Here's the known cast for HBO's The Last of Us so far. After winning multiple awards for her portrayal of Ellie in Naughty Dog's Last of Us video game, Ashley Johnson will star in HBO's The Last of Us as Anna, a pregnant woman who brings a child into a world that is of articulation. Fellow Last of Us game star Troy Baker is joining Johnson for a role in the HBO series. Troy plays James, a leader of a group of settlers. Meryl Dandridge is Marlene, reprising her role from The Last of Us games as the leader of the Fireflies resistance movement. Melanie Lynskey plays Kathleen in The Last of Us, an original character from the HBO series. Mindhunter's Anna Torv is Tess, Joel's smuggling partner. Joel's little brother Tommy is played by Gabriel Luna. Luna previously worked with HBO on True Detective and was cast as Tommy in The Last of Us after submitting screen tests to Mazin, Druckmann, and executive producer Carolyn Strauss. Nico Parker of Dumbo fame will play Joel's daughter Sarah. Parks and Recreation star Nick Offerman will bring some magic to Ron Swanson as Bill, a survivor. Murray Bartlett plays Frank, a neighbor of Offerman's Bill. Frank had no dialogue in the game, so casting Bartlett is a clear sign that HBO has expanded the character's role for The Last of Us TV series. Riley Abel, who first appeared in The Last of Us Left Behind DLC games, is portrayed by Euphoria's Storm Reed. Jeffrey Pierce played Joel Tommy's brother in The Last of Us game. But on the HBO show he plays an original character named Perry, a rebel living in an area quarantined by the military. Graham Greene and Elaine Miles will play married couple Marlon and Florence, two other original characters from The Last of Us. Henry and his son Sam starred in the HBO adaptation The Last of Us by Lamar Johnson and Kevon Woodard. Details on HBO's story The Last of Us. The story of The Last of Us TV series will focus on and adapt the entire events of the first game and tell the story of how Joel and Ellie met and their original journey together. Mazin and Druckmann said the series will expand on the game's original story content. and flesh out what already exists, rather than removing characters or narrative elements. This means that nothing from the games will be radically undone or decanonized, but there will be more details that don't fit into the games. The inclusion of new characters like Jeffrey Price's Perry and the expanded role of the previously insignificant Last of Us game character Frank certainly helps. The producers also said that material from The Last of Us Part 2 could be included in the HBO show, but that would likely come in a minor way. Odds point to a series focusing primarily on the first game, with later seasons teasing the second installment in relatively minor ways, perhaps with the introduction of a young Abby on the Firefly site. HBO's The Last of Us appears to be keeping the game's award-winning history intact. That not only means fans will be satisfied, but also an audience unfamiliar with games and only interested in Pedro Pascal's new HBO show, The Last of Us trailer. The first footage from HBO's The Last of Us arrived during the August 2022 premiere of House of the Dragon. But a trailer wasn't released until September. With the first teaser for the live-action adaptation of The Last of Us, HBO has been surprisingly generous with the reveal. There were several lingering glimpses of Pedro Pascal as Joel and Bella Ramsey as Ellie, as well as plenty of snippets of apocalyptic carnage. Even the iconic clickers got a chance to show how much fear and suspense they will create in the new format. After this teaser, the first full trailer for The Last of Us arrived, but not until December 2022. In this latest trailer for The Last of Us, viewers got their first real experience with Pascal's Joel and Ramsey's Ellie in action. Much of the rest of The Last of Us cast has been revealed or further screened, including Nick Offerman's Bill and Storm Reed's Riley. This new trailer for The Last of Us also showed off some of the impressive cinematography and sprawling apocalyptic scenes. This trailer also firmly cemented The Last of Us story premise that Ellie is infected and that Joel must take her west. The Last of Us on HBO format and runtime. The Last of Us debuts on HBO and HBO Max on Sunday, January 15, 2023 and will be available to stream in 4K Kelvin for HBO Max customers. There will be 9 episodes of The Last of Us, each approximately 1 hour long. With episodes airing weekly, The Last of Us will keep viewers on the edge of their seats until March 2023. Filming on The Last of Us lasted just under a year. Not only is it HBO's first venture into a video game adaptation, it's also the largest television production in Canadian history. Live-action clickers are already terrifying. While Joel and Ellie are the core of The Last of Us, the show also brings one of the most compelling monsters in video game history into live action, the clickers. The cordyceps mushroom in The Last of Us isn't just turning into WWII or 28 Days Later style zombies, nor are they Walking Dead like The Walking Dead's walkers. While the early stages of cordyceps brain infection certainly have parallels to typical zombies, the clicker stage transforms hapless victims into something else entirely. Clickers in The Last of Us get their name from the continuous clicking sound they make, a form of echolocation. They need it because the fungal protrusion on their skull blinded them. As The Last of Us trailers already suggest, Joel and Ellie hiding helplessly while a blind, eyeless clicker tries to assess their location is already a recipe for incredibly tense TV viewing. While many cordyceps variants have been infected in The Last of Us games, it's the clickers that have really resonated with gamers. What was introduced by The Last of Us TV series has been received incredibly positively by fans of the games. The fact that HBO has clearly not overlooked the importance of clickers certainly helps. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and support my channel.